Somos Berenice Flores y Sebastián Aguiluz y este es el podcast Entrepreneur de Keep It Up Show, un espacio creado por dos emprendedores en el que buscamos traer gente chingona e increíble que está constantemente cambiando la forma de ver y hacer las cosas. Cada martes, jueves y sábados podrás escuchar un nuevo episodio donde encontrar información clave que te ayude a impulsar tus ideas, tu empresa, pero sobre todo, tus sueños. No importa qué te dediques, keep it up. Bienvenidos a un nuevo episodio de The Keep It Up Show. Antes de empezar, si nos estás escuchando por YouTube, ayúdanos con un like, dándole clic a la campanita y suscribiéndote al canal. Y en Spotify, dándonos seguir. Hoy tenemos de invitada a Vicki Higgins, CEO de Connexion Partnerships, agencia especializada en ayudar a la captación de patrocinios para empresas e individuos. Hablaremos con Vicki sobre los secretos detrás de cerrar patrocinios, qué buscan realmente las empresas para colaborar y las diferentes formas de generar valor que perdura.
Hola, muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos a otro episodio de The Keep It Up Show. Aquí Sebastián Aguiluz, cofundador y CEO de Entrepreneur, y estoy con Victoria Higgins, CEO de Connexion Partnership. Bueno, por el resto de la entrevista, Victoria y yo estaremos hablando en inglés, entonces, pues, perdonen mi inglés, pero bueno, sin más por el momento, le voy a empezar a dar la bienvenida a Victoria. Hi, Victoria. Hi, Vicky. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure for us to have you here. So, Vicky, first of all, for the people that are unfamiliar with you, can you tell us what is it you do?
I help entrepreneurs, podcasters, nonprofit organizations get corporate sponsorship. So I have had a lifetime of working in the sponsorship space, and I help them understand the process. I train teams and help them really find ways that they can collaborate with companies, grow their income, reach more people, and align with corporate partners to really get their message out.
Perfect. So can you tell us your secret origin? How did you get involved in this sponsorship world?
I studied sports marketing in college.
Okay.
And then I worked for the Indiana Pacers basketball team, the NBA basketball team. I was with them for about 10 years. And I learned a lot about sales and sponsorships and client service. And I really loved it. And then I went to an airline and I managed all the sponsorships around North America. So Mexico, US, and Canada. And I worked with everything from NBA teams to NFL teams to some really cool programs and soccer teams in Guadalajara, Mexico, and some programs in Mexico City, some cultural events. And I really had a great time, but I learned what it takes to make a decision as a company, what we were going to sponsor. We only had a limited budget, and there were over 38 markets that I needed to divide that budget into. And so I had to be really selective around what we sponsored. And so I learned both the selling side from being with the Pacers and the decision-making side from being with the airline. Then I went on to do some work in the tourism industry. And I found that aligning tourism organizations with sponsorship, like companies, like for example, I was with Los Angeles Tourism and we started a dining program, Dine LA, and we aligned with American Express as a sponsor. And that was really, really a lucrative opportunity. And it also helped paid for the whole program. And American Express helped get the word out. So it became a really successful program. That program has lasted over 10 years. And they spend a really good chunk of money to help it work for Los Angeles, but it's also really beneficial for American Express. So for me, the secret ingredient is always finding alignment and a true partnership where you can really benefit, win-win on both sides.
Perfect. So before we go to the sponsors, I just have to ask, how is it to be inside the sports industry, but not the way that most people usually think of, like not as an athlete or not as a coach or something like that, but as a key figure in the business part of the sports industry as an insider.
As an insider in the sports industry, there are so many people that make the game happen, whether it's an NBA team like I worked for, or an NFL game, or a soccer game, or anything, like any sporting event. There's a huge number of people from the setup and turning over the venue from a concert to become a basketball, a court, to becoming an indoor soccer field sometimes. So there's all the people who do the setup. There are the people that make sure the facility's clean. There are the marketing staff like I was. There are operations to make sure that when halftime is starting, the act is ready to go and all the technology works. There are people that make sure the lights work and the messages are correct, that the sponsors have the right announcements up. And it's really, really amazing. Everything from finance, making sure everybody gets paid, to marketing and telling people about the sporting event, to social media and digital, to community relations and giving back in the community and doing autograph sessions and things like that. So there's a whole world of jobs out there that make up what is behind the teams that we see on television. And it's really an amazing thing to be a part of. It was so fun. I spent 10 years with the Pacers, and I learned so much. I created friendships that I still have to this day. I learned so much about many different cities and traveled to many different cities. And there are just so many different things that you can do in sports. And it was really incredible to be a part of it and see, these 7-foot tall guys walking through the office and sitting down in your cubicle to have a chat. And I took some of them in my car to go do autograph sessions. And it was just really, really, really fun and really amazing at all the behind the scenes work that goes into it. Because we were working all day in our job and then all evening for the game. So it was fun and amazing. And like I said, I have friendships to this day, and you just become a family because you spend so much time together.
Vicki, I can say that it's really refreshing to have a guest that's expert in sponsorships, because the first thing that people ask the most to us on the entrepreneur team is, how do we get great speakers like you? But the second thing that they ask the most is, how do you get so many sponsors and have big companies turn to you and see, hey, what you're doing is awesome. Let's, as you said, find a way to make a win-win of the situation. So it's not often that I get to make the same question. So
thank you. Well, it's such an honor to be on your podcast. It's such an honor to be here and talk with you, because you're doing a great job. You're reaching a lot of people. You're aligning with corporate sponsors. You're doing what I teach people to do. So this is great.
So outside of the obvious peaks, like for the people that are sponsored, that, okay, you get money or you get the product that you need, and also the obvious part of the company to get brand awareness, why should both the companies that want to sponsor and the people that are looking for sponsorship look for these kinds? What are the intangible benefits outside of the obvious ones like money and brand recognition that you think being sponsored brings to the table?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. One of the biggest things that I think is a big benefit of sponsorship, when a sponsor, like a company, is looking to reach a very specific audience, it might be the audience that you're talking to as a podcaster, like entrepreneurs. It might be an audience of moms and dads. It might be an audience that are wealthy individuals, or it might be an audience of workers in a certain industry that are fans of a particular, or fans of a particular sport. Whatever the case, the reason that a company sponsors isn't usually to get a logo on something. The reason a company sponsors anything a sporting event, a parade, a fair, a festival, a nonprofit, the reason the company sponsors that is one of three reasons. One, the first reason is marketing. It's better for them and more cost effective for them to reach this specific audience and market by aligning with that property, venue, event, fundraiser, podcast, whatever. So marketing is the first play. The second reason is typically it could be a philanthropic or a community giving or community relations move. So it might look good in the community that this company is aligning with this particular event or venue or property, I'll call it. So it could be a community relations play or a corporate giving play. And that is important, not because they're not really looking for the logo, they're looking for that alignment. Thirdly is something that surfaced during and is still surfacing because of the pandemic, and that is corporate social responsibility. It means a company is taking a stand and being responsible and standing for something. So if your podcast or if your event or your venue is on a mission for a movement, could be equality or diversity or social justice or anything. It could be saving animals. You know, if you're on a mission, then there are certain companies that can use that bucket of money to align with you because they also want to stand for that cause. So a company is going to look for an alignment, and the alignment is going to be from marketing or corporate giving, like it's good to do, or because they want to stand for something. Those are also three different buckets of money that you can pull from and coordinate with from the company. So the typical reason is they could do a better job of reaching their consumer and selling their product or service if they align with somebody that has that particular person that's their customer.
A couple of months, well, yeah, more than a year now, quarantine time will do that for you. But a couple of months ago, another entrepreneur asked me about the business model and about everything we do. And it was like, okay, I see that most of our income comes from sponsorships because what we do is we democratize the entrepreneurship way of thinking. And part of that is making our products accessible so that they aren't, there's not a money barrier to consume them. So, and he was like, okay, so most of your income is actually from sponsorship. And I was like, yeah. And he made me a question, which I'm going to say the answer right now, but he had a point, which was like, aren't you worried about that? Isn't it risky to have most of your income come from sponsorships? And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not that nervous because well, we've made things right, or at least the best we could for a couple of years now, and we've always had our sponsors as a top priority and have them really happy, so they keep repeating and increasing their participation and everything. But I understand the question because the priorities change sometimes, and it has happened to me. Like the people that was on the company, that was my contact on the sponsorship, takes another job, and well, there goes the sponsorship because no one wants to keep the sponsorship from someone else. But also the other side of the coin, like maybe I was trying to approach this company, try to work with them. They said no, but then the person changed and they found the old email and they were like, hey, I actually want to sponsor this. So I get where the question comes from, and it is a risk, but I want to listen to your take on this. Is it, for you, is it risky to have a big part of your income come from sponsorships or related incomes?
It's a great question. And a lot of podcasters and entrepreneurs are creating sponsorships that are short term. I'm going to step back for a minute before I answer the question, and I'm going to speak on behalf of a company. So let's say I'm a representative of a company like a bank, and I recognize that you have entrepreneurs and I want these entrepreneurs to be do business banking with my company. So I'm interested in your podcast. Now I'm busy, I have a job, and I'm also managing the requests that are coming through for sponsorships. So when you're asking me every month, will I sponsor your podcast? Will I sponsor your podcast? Will I sponsor your podcast? I may be getting 12 requests from you, one a month. And I have a lot more things on my plate. So I, as the company, would rather you say, hey, I reach entrepreneurs. These entrepreneurs are your demographic. They might set up a business banking account with your bank. And I want to propose to you an involvement for a whole year. And here's what I'll provide to you. That's better for me as the bank, as the representative of the company, because then I don't have to keep approving it every single month because I'm busy and I have other things that are going on. So one of the things that I would recommend in answering this question is see if you have the ability to say, hey, I would like to partner with you. Maybe we do a test run for a month or two and see how it goes. But I would really like to partner with you for a year or 2 years and put a contract in place so that you're aware, Vicki at the bank, what benefits you're going to be receiving. And I'm also really clear about how I can promote your business banking to my listeners every month for the next 12 months. That does two things. It helps you have security. So no matter who is in the office at the bank, if I leave, somebody else has a copy of that contract. It's typically on file. And you'll usually set up like a kickoff meeting with 1 or 2 or 3 more people because they will need to bring in the person at the bank. I would bring in my social media person, my website person, and my marketing person, maybe corporate social responsibility, to see how we could best use this over the next year. Now you've got 3 or 4 contacts at the bank instead of just one, and you have a contract for a whole year. So it really takes the risk out of the month to month type of deal. The other thing I would say from the corporate person, so if I'm still representing the bank, it makes it a whole heck of a lot easier on me. I only have to approve it one time instead of 12 times during the year. And I would rather one time and be done for the year so I know what I'm getting for the whole year and I don't have to keep resurfacing this. And that way it's a bigger deal for what you're going to receive. And I know what I'm going to get. I know I can expect so many leads coming from Mexico. They're entrepreneurs. They're opening businesses. I'm going to give them a great killer deal on opening a bank account for their business. And I know what I'm going to be getting for the year. And you know that you're going to be sending that out on social and through your email and on your podcast for the year. So that's my first recommendation. Move away from just the advertisement and really set up a true sponsorship, which is not only advertisement in your podcast, but also some social media, some email. It doesn't have to be super fancy, but it does need to be something that you can execute for the whole year. Most of my deals are 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 years, even 10-year deals. Many of them are very high dollar amounts, but it takes the same amount of work for a lower dollar amount or a higher dollar amount. And so what my recommendation is to entrepreneurs is to not play small and to really step up and own your access to your audience and present a proposal that's a year long. It definitely takes out the risk.
I know beggars can be choosers, but it's usually talk about what to do to be attractive for someone to sponsor you. But I want to talk about the other side of the coin, about the fact that the company has money and is willing to give it to you doesn't necessarily mean that they are the correct sponsor to you. So
Correct.
as someone that's looking for sponsorship, and I can understand, like, okay, I have bills to pay, I'm losing money, and there comes X company that whose values are the opposite of mine and the company and everything, but they are offering money. Eh, what can I do to like peace my mind by choosing not to take that money? How can I say this is the one, this isn't the right company, and it's not only about money. It's not only about who is willing to pay for your services, but also like the brand quality and the recognition that some brands bring to you.
That's a really great question. First, make a list of all of the assets, anything you have access to. This can be your email list, your advertisements, all of your assets, Facebook, social media, anything. And when you have a really full, complete list of assets, then take a look at who your audience is. When you're really clear about who your audience is, you want to look at it from the perspective of, what does your audience use? How can you bring sponsors in that are going, and you might even do a survey to your audience from an email survey or something like this. Find out, what type of credit card they use for their business, find out where they bank, find out, just the name of the banks that they like to use for their business. Find out what kind of clothes they wear, what kind of coffee they drink, what they do for fun, and where do they go to Home Depot or Lowe's or some other type of store? Are they a Costco member? Just find out what your customers use, what your listeners use. And that becomes your list, because if you can provide value, always think of what's going to bring value to my people. How can I enhance my service that I'm providing through my podcast? Would it be beneficial if every entrepreneur got a special deal for banking? Would it be beneficial for every entrepreneur to have a special discount at Staples or Costco for business supplies? Would it be helpful to them? So find out what they need, and then that becomes your first list of people that you go after. You want it to be aligned. I really understand that sometimes money's tight and it's just tough. But I also believe that your audience is also, many of them have a side hustle and they have a main job. So even reach out to your fan base and say, hey, we are looking for corporate do your survey first and see what types of products and services, what kind of car do they drive? Who are they? And you'll start seeing some consistency. And then, that's going to be your list. And then you also want to ask them, like, hey, if you work at a business, and your business would be interested in sponsoring our podcast to help entrepreneurs, that's a great thing too. There could be real estate companies, there could be somebody that works for American Express, or like an investment company. Like, a lot of people right now, especially, have a job and a side hustle. Like, they're trying to get their podcast going, they're trying to get their business off the ground. So it's always great to ask, like, your fans, like, hey, would your company want to sponsor it? And then as you can start building alignment, I always believe in not working with unaligned businesses, because it's a reflection of how you're treating your listeners and your fans. And so if you can in any way find other people, there's a ton of people out there that want to align with entrepreneurs. There's a ton of people that are out there that want to align with the people you're talking to. You just have to ask your audience, like, what they need and maybe what some of their frustrations are. And if you can solve a problem for them on giving them a better deal on loans, like maybe they can get some kind of a loan for their business, and you can set that up as a sponsor for your podcast or for your business. So always try to align and start with your people first. That's always a great place to start.
Talking about starting, about a great place to start, obviously as you go on and as you make whatever you do, if it's podcast, the more podcasts you make, the more events if you make them, whatever you do, the more you make, and the more recognition you have, and the more meetings you have looking for sponsors, you obviously get better, and you also get more recognized. But for people who are just starting, and I was this guy like 3 years ago, because I actually can't believe that some companies, and some of those companies are still with us to this day, believe in us, believe in our mission, because I know there's a lot of vanity metrics that make it really hard for big companies to take a chance on someone who's starting. Like, hey, I don't have the brand recognition, and I don't have the number of followers on X social media, and I don't have,
Sure, I get it.
and I'm not an influencer or something. But for these guys that are starting, that say, okay, I don't have that. How can I grab the attention of big companies?
So the first step when you're just starting out and you don't have a big following, the first step is start with your people. Your people that are already your audience, they love you, they're following you, and they probably work for a company. Somebody in your list probably works for a company. When you can start getting a few smaller companies on board, that is the best. I actually, even doing a naming rights deal on the Toyota Arena, I started with the local dealership. I want to get the local buy-in first. So I always start small. I always start with my people, my list, start with the local businesses, the people that you know, friends and family, people that are in your area, people that you know, and just get a few sponsors on board. They don't have to be huge, but they probably will be aligned or a small branch of a bigger company. And then as you start working your way up and growing in your following and growing in the way that you can provide them benefit, then you'll be able to start approaching those bigger companies. But I mean, I've sold millions of dollars in sponsorship, and I have always started, I want to get the local buy-in. I want to get people that I know. I want to work with people that I like. I want to work with people that I believe in and that believe in my clients. And then usually they're the ones that take it to corporate, not me. It's most of the time I'm starting with the local guys, and then they're the ones going, wow, this is a great idea. Let's take it up the ladder because it's more than I can spend, so then they're the ones that are kind of pushing it forward. And that's the way to do it, because then it's internally coming from somebody that wants to make it happen. So I usually encourage people that are just starting off, start with your list, then start with your local area, people that are aligned and or could be aligned with your audience. And when you just survey your audience and see what they want, that's a great place to start.
I don't know if it's been the same on your experience, but in my experience, sponsorships are like dominoes. Like the first one is really hard, and then when you get the first one, the next one is easier, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one.
That's why I say start with your list, because if you get one or two off of your list, then they're going to start coming in.
Exactly. Yeah. And also, I don't know if it's been the same for you, but in my case, the biggest trouble with getting sponsorships is actually finding the right person in the company to talk to, because since each company has like a different structure, and sometimes it's the marketing team, and sometimes it's the communication team, and sometimes it's the human resources. And I don't know if it's the same in the USA, but here in Mexico, like every single company, there's a different person responsible for sponsorships. And sometimes when you ask in the company, like trip guys say that they are, and then it turns out that the decision making is up to someone else. Is that the same?
It is. It's always the same. I mean, that's where it really, I always have conversations first. I always just say, hey, who would be the decision maker? Because you want to be sure you're communicating and able to have a good conversation with somebody that can make the decision. So I usually ask people right up front, like, hey, who's the right person? I do a lot of outreach on LinkedIn and find out who people are. And I ask questions. I just say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And I always ask for different people to be on the call. Like, hey, maybe somebody from marketing, maybe somebody from community relations, maybe somebody that handles sales, maybe somebody that is involved in corporate social responsibility, or, making sure that the company is well represented in what I'm doing here. And so if I can get a few people on the call, I usually just set it up as like an informational call. I want to learn about you. I want to learn about your company and see if there's an alignment. People are way more interested in getting on the phone for 15 or 20 minutes if I'm not doing all the talking and I'm just asking them questions about their company. Then I can learn if it's aligned with my audience, and then I can also learn if who the right person is. I can tell from that meeting with 3 or 4 people if they're the right people.
Perfect. So, Vicky, I know you've been giving a lot of tips for sponsorships, and as I say, it's refreshing to talk to someone else about this world. But let's leave sponsorships for a while and talk about you. What do you think you've learned by being an entrepreneur, by being a podcaster, by finding sponsorships or helping other people find sponsorships that you probably wouldn't have learned in another job?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I was in the corporate world with the Pacers and then with the airline and then in the tourism industry for almost 20 years before I left and started my own business. Before I started my own agency, there were a lot of things that I wanted to do. But I, like a lot of your listeners, had a side hustle and kept dreaming of making that happen. But I was afraid to leave the corporate security of a job. I really encouraged people to wait until they have like a year's worth of income built up before actually taking that leap. That was one of the things that saved me and allowed me to really take the leap and move on to success. And, one of the things that I love so much about training teams now is there are a lot of venues and events that are using corporate sponsorship, and they're doing it brilliantly. There are a lot of entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, podcasters that could use corporate sponsorships in a much bigger way to gain more revenue, to gain more impact if they also really have that company promoting their work and really making it a true partnership. And the thing that I love so much is I don't believe all of the challenges in our world are going to be solved by politics. I believe it is people like you, people out there getting a message out, making a difference, raising their hands saying, hey, I want to change something in our world and I want our world to be a better place. And I think if all of us people that have ideas around how we can make our world a better place through a podcast, through a book, through events, through helping other people, if we can align with the companies that have money and have that same mission, then I think we can really make a big difference in our world. And that is what I love about training teams on how to go get corporate sponsorships. The teams that I train are passionate, they love what they do, and they are really, really excited about making a difference in this world. And so when I can show them the step-by-step strategy on how to align with a corporate sponsor so they can really level up how much money they're bringing in and also level up how many people they're able to reach with their message. Now, if they have a big company out there talking about their message in addition to them, it's a game changer. And so that's what really makes me excited about being on Clubhouse. It makes me excited about talking with people like you. It makes me excited about podcasters and entrepreneurs and people that are out there to make a difference in our world. Because when you can understand the step-by-step strategy of how to approach a corporate sponsor, it can really change your life. And it can also really change your message and get out there to more people. I think that is how we change our world for the better.
To start wrapping this up, and you've been giving us a lot of tips about sponsorship, but the last question we always do is 3 do's and 3 don'ts for entrepreneurs. Basically, 3 things that they should do and 3 things they shouldn't do. So what are your 3 do's and don'ts for entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. For my 3 do's, number 1 is make sure your mindset is right. So if you need to read books, go to programs or classes, you've got to get right with being worthy of receiving money. You've got to get right with not talking so much and being a great listener. And you've got to get right with understanding that you have had all this experience and you're not starting from scratch. All of this experience has happened for a reason. And so number 1 is mindset. So make sure you get that right. Number 2, when it comes to your business and also sponsorship, you have to know your numbers. You have to know every metric, every number that you can get your hands on. So number 2 is do know your numbers. And number 3, when it relates to sponsorship in general, know what you can offer a sponsor. Often we're out there saying, oh, I need money. But really, you need to know how you can benefit a sponsor, because the only reason they're going to pay you is if they get some benefit out of it. So those are my 3 do's: mindset, know your numbers, and make sure you know your assets that you can offer a sponsor. My 3 don'ts. My 3 don'ts are: don't wait until everything is perfect. I am a recovering perfectionist. So just do it. Done is better than perfect. Just go do it and everything will start working out. So don't wait. Number 2 don't send out generic proposals and e-blast them out to everybody. Nobody wants to receive a bronze, silver, gold package. Nobody wants to receive a generic thing that isn't thoughtful. So don't e-blast out your sponsorship packages. That's not the way to do it, at least not the way to do it for a higher level and a more relationship-driven sponsorship. And then finally, don't forget to give a recap report. So many of us collect the money and then move on to the next thing. It's so important because the person sitting in the seat that's made the decision to believe in you and give you money for this sponsorship, they need to look good to their boss. So don't forget to do a recap report and provide them with some kind of a review to say, hey, here's what we did for you, and make it be like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times the value of what they gave you. You want to make that person look good for making the decision that they made. So don't forget to give them a recap report. Those are my 3 do's and 3 don'ts.
Perfect. Vicki, if someone wanted to get in contact with you, hire your services, or just know a little bit more about sponsorship, how can they find you on social media?
You can find me at vickihiggins.com. My website is just my name, so vickihiggins.com.
Perfect. So Vicki, I just want to thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And as we say on this program, keep it up.
Keep it up. I loved it. Thank you so much for your time. This has been fantastic.
Si te gustó el episodio de hoy, recuerda que puedes escucharnos en Spotify y YouTube, y para más herramientas de estos temas, estamos en Instagram y Facebook como @entrepreneur. Si quieres seguir a nuestro invitado de hoy, te dejamos en la caja de descripción sus redes sociales y datos de contacto. Gracias por escucharnos y nos vemos en el próximo episodio. Recuerda, keep it up.